Nah, I'm just fucking with you. Who wanna see a pregnant ass bitch twerking? Nobody. I'm not gonna embarrass myself today. What is up, homies? Today we're gonna be talking about twerking and how it hurt me, but how fun it is. Should you do it? Should you take it up? Let's find out. However, let's start with its history, its origins. It's got a long one. It's amazing. That's what she said. When it comes to the actual twerking movement, it is part of the New Orleans bounce. Twerking is generally in a squatting position where your hips are thrusting. The motion causes your booty cheeks to bounce. However, when it comes to the New Orleans bounce area and dance style, it is only one of the many dance movements that they have up in there. There's other movements like exercising and mixing that are incorporated into that style. Twerking is only a part of this dance style and its form. However, the term itself, twerking, is used as a general term by the public to describe the movement of shaking your booty. It was created during the rap era when the DJs would do the call and response with their audience. Speaking of that era, the New Orleans bounce originated from the late 80s, early 90s, when the New Orleans bounce scene was poppin'. Bounce is still very prevalent in our music, with artists like Big Frida, who is a very prominent bounce artist, still being featured in music such as Drake's Nice for What and Formation by Beyonce. The bounce beat is very prominent in other music such as Lemon by Nerd, or is it N-E-R-E-D? I don't know. There's many other songs that use the bounce beat in its music, and all those are paying homage to where it originally came from, which is two songs. One is Dragman or Triggerman by the Showboys and Brown Beat by DJ Cameron. Fancy. Something else that was really surprising to me when I was researching all of this was how much of an impact Hurricane Katrina had on its spread in the United States. So in 2005, when Hurricane Katrina hit, millions of people were left homeless in the Gulf Coast as well as New Orleans. That caused the bounce artists that were very popular in New Orleans to go to other cities and start playing their music in clubs there. Slowly, bounce became more prevalent throughout the United States. So it spread through tragedy, which is unfortunate. Let's go even further back, shall we? When New Orleans was an English colony, the slaves that were there were allowed to congregate, play music, and dance up in the Congo Square on the edge of town. For those of you who have been to New Orleans and know what I'm talking about, because I haven't been there, it was later located off of Rampart Street. Rampart Street was very historic for its African American commercial and entertainment district. At Congo Square, every Sunday, the slaves would gather around and gather in groups according to tribe affiliation. So some of those people involved Africans that just got there versus the natives that have been in New Orleans for a while now, as well as Mardi Gras Indians. That in itself has so much history that I just would not be able to cover in this video and give it justice. Those were some of the tribal affiliations that would gather and participate in Neo-African drumming and dance. I don't know why I used air quotes for that. I saw it in my research. So the congregation at Congo Square lasted up until the mid-1800s. And to this day, scholars agree that the Congo Square was very important when it comes to keeping the African culture alive. Later on, they also incorporated not just their West African roots, but also European technology. So at that time, that was the harmonica and the fiddle and other instruments. and they incorporated that into their song and dance. So when it comes to recently, twerking saw their up peak in interest when in 2013 Miley Cyrus decided to twerk at the VMAs on Robin Thicke's crotch. Keep in mind though, like we covered earlier, her twerking was actually the movement exercise from the bounce scene, but whatever, we don't gotta be so technical, I guess. Even Big Frida later on commented that she was trying to twerk but don't know how to twerk. She also said that she was not personally offended, but it is offensive to a lot of people who've been twerking and shaking their asses for years, especially in the Black culture. As of Google search terms, term twerking and twerk are on a slow downtrend, but if you look, that 2013 uphill of Google searches was right after the Miley Cyrus performance. So despite the fact that one of the prominent bounce artists, Big Frida, is a little critical of what Miley Cyrus did, we cannot deny the fact that she definitely put twerking in the minds of the younger generation that had no idea it was even a 30-year-old dance form. I would like to say too though, even though it's on a downhill trend when it comes to Google searching of it, at least when I was in the club and in the strip club working, it is still very prevalent, and bounce culture in itself is still very prevalent in the clubs where people are getting drunk and twerking their asses off on the floor. But feel free to disagree. If you have seen something different in the dance scene, comment down below. But as for my personal experience, it's definitely still very prevalent. So let's talk about what twerking did to me and how it hurt me. Back when I was a stripper, I was pretty consistent with my stretching. And I'd get off like at 2 a.m., get home by like 2:30, stretch, and then finally by 3:30 or 4 a.m. I would go to sleep. However, after a while, I kind of stopped stretching after work and would just get off work, go straight to sleep. Can you blame me? I was tired, okay? But after a while, I started noticing my back was really hurting to the point where I was like not able to function properly throughout my day, as well as if I sat down, I would just feel this painful like tingling going down my leg all the way to my knee. It got really bad. I kept trying to stretch my booty out to see if maybe it was just a tight butt. So I ended up going to the doctor to find out what was wrong with me, and after some x-rays they found out that luckily it wasn't a herniated disc or anything like that had to do with the spine. It was more a tight back, tight ass piriformis muscle. It was pinching my sciatica nerve, which is a nerve that runs down from your spine all the way down to your leg, and it was pinching it and causing those painful tingles running down all the way to my knee. Luckily, I honestly consider myself in not that bad of a state, because it could have been way worse, like a herniated disc or something else. And so I feel after a few months of me going to physical therapy, I was able to get rid of that pain and function properly. Let's start with the positives of twerking. A lot of people don't know how they place their body on a daily basis. I mean, that's why we have so many people with back problems from sitting at work all day and not knowing that they're curled up the whole time. Same thing with our pelvis. There's a lot of people that don't know what a neutral pelvic position is versus an anterior pelvic position, which is where you stick your butt out basically, and a posterior position of your pelvis. What did I say? Posterior? I have never said posterior pelvic position in my life. So you're going to have to excuse my pronunciation because that's just who I am. Okay? Twerking is really good in teaching you about your body, where because you need that hip thrusting motion to bounce your butt, you're gonna be way more in control and knowledgeable of where your hips are. So when you have your pelvis in an anterior pelvic tilt, that's when you're sticking your butt out and then bringing it back and then putting it in that anterior pelvic tilt again. And that is very helpful so that later on you have the neural connectivity to be able to do it naturally. In other words, muscle memory, which, keep in mind, is not a very good term to use. I had a professor that was against using that term because muscles don't remember stuff. But that's what I'm talking about, just basically to be able to have the general public understand what term I'm using, is muscle memory, which is also called neuromuscular connectivity, right? And this happens in daily life. It's like running or riding your bike, right? In the beginning, you don't know how to do it, but over time, you build those neuromuscular connections and are able to stay balanced on the bike or run flawlessly without tripping over yourself. It just happens in everyday life. And thus, you could do the same thing with being knowledgeable of where your pelvis is. So if one day you notice, oh man, I've been sticking my butt out lately, you already have those neuromuscular connections that cause you to bring your pelvis back because you are aware of where it was. Another positive is, it's dancing. Okay, sorry if I'm biased, but I freaking love dancing and would never discourage anyone to not do it. It doesn't just raise your heartbeat trying to learn to twerk. It also gets your hamstrings working, your booty working. So just having those muscles working in general is always a good thing, right? So let's start with the negatives. Dancers in general tend to have hip problems, general pains, low back problems. One of them is caused by constantly being in that anterior pelvic tilt that I mentioned earlier, which I think I personally did as well because I was in high-ass heels and trying to stick my butt out at the strip club to look cute. I was probably looking like a duck, which wasn't helping my situation. Walking like that all the time with your butt out causes your hip flexors to be tight, and over time they just become tight and you naturally start standing in that way. So that's not good. Us dancers gotta fix that, okay? A lot of dancers also have that same injury I had to the piriformis muscle. Because that muscle is connected to our low back as well as our butt, this pain from the piriformis can be manifested through low back pain, butt pain, leg pain. It's all connected. This can also happen through overuse or just one big accident that causes that muscle to have problems. Generally, repetitive motions tend to cause injuries to the body. Not only that, but when you engage your spine in repetitive motions, it can be bad. Because since we as animals went from walking on fours to standing on twos, the body had to have the spine in an S shape in order to be able to balance everything on top, right? So the head, arms, it's all a balancing act, and so the spine is shaped accordingly. The bad part is this causes a lot of weak points in the spine. One of those weak points being the low back, because it's already in that little S shape. And so of course, twerking causes you to jerk that S shape very suddenly and very excessively, and that's just not helping. It's a weak point. The movement is constantly jerking it back and forth. It's just going to cause problems over time if you're not careful. Let's talk about how to prevent injury. I don't want to sound like your mama, but you definitely need to stay hydrated, get some rest, and get a warm-up going. This warm-up should include dynamic stretching. What is dynamic stretching? Well, dynamic stretching is active movements by your joints that include their full range of motion before an exercise or workout. So, for twerking and dancing in general, I would definitely recommend things like, let me give you an example, hip openers, leg swings, and spinal flexion and extension. There are, however, many others, and I would definitely recommend, if you're interested, to look those up and create your own to your liking. Those are all very good for you. And for a warm-up, you should have between 5 to 10 minutes of a warm-up in order to continue on to an exercise. Once you're done shaking that thing, static stretching is definitely the best thing you can do after your exercise routine or your twerking session. Static stretching is where you hold a stretch for a period of time. Some examples of static stretching that would be great for twerking is the hamstring stretch, the pigeon stretch, as well as deep lunges for those hip flexor muscles in the hips. For static stretches, you should hold them about 20 to 30 seconds. I used to work at a physical therapy clinic where there was a lot of old immobile people, and we tended to tell them 10 to 30 seconds because there was some people that could hardly hold it for 10 seconds. So keep in mind, if you're immobile, I would more recommend 10 to 30 seconds if you're taking up exercising after not doing it for a long time. And if you're an old person, maybe consult a doctor before you consider learning how to twerk for reasons listed earlier. My final conclusion: I graduated with an exercise major with an emphasis in dance. So sorry if I am a little biased, but I will not discourage dancing ever. I truly think it's the best form of exercise for anyone because you're exercising without realizing it. It's more fun than it is a workout. Plus, it teaches you how to be able to move your body in different ways you never thought you could. I took belly dance for 4 years, and hand undulations are just so beautiful, and you first start out like, what am I doing, right? So it's just a beautiful way of learning more about your body and its functionality. So on that note, if you want to learn a new dance form, I don't think possible injuries should stop you from doing that. But you should always consider, when you're studying something new, you don't just study that thing itself. You have to learn the supplemental knowledge around it. A perfect example of that I saw recently was with another YouTuber that studies body language. His name is Derek Van Shake. He talked about how he didn't just study body language, he also read books on psychology, for example, right? The supplemental knowledge is just as important as the action that you're learning. So tying this back to twerking, you shouldn't just learn twerking itself. You should also learn how to prevent injury through stretching before and after the dancing. So what do you think about twerking or bounce, the New Orleans bounce? Did I miss anything? Is there something you wish I had covered in this video? And do you agree with my opinion that any dance form should be learned as long as you do the supplemental training around it? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. Keep doing stuff, homies, safely, and I'll see you next time.